So I was going to make a normal event guide for the Christmas 2022 NA rerun that we're going to be getting here in a couple of days over here on the NA side of things, but then I realized the only thing that really changed between that event and now is that they added a 90++ node to make it a bit easier to go into this event and actually farm it, and that's probably going to be the main thing that most people care about, because other than that, everything is pretty much still the same. You could still try to get your Santa Carna, you could still clear out the event shop. I mean, they still have that really nice node where you can use a currency you get from the Lotto to farm for that, which does just drop the gold currency for the event shop, which can be really nice if you're not planning on summoning to try to get the event CEs and you want to make clearing out the Lotto shop a little bit easier. Also keep in mind that the materials you get from the Lotto boxes to use to open that can be sold for QP, so kind of just gauge whether or not you want to sell those for QP or if you want to actually go for the Lotto shop. But I think just using them for QP is probably better because you can farm an infinite amount of the event currency technically by just slamming your head into the 90++, whereas technically that material gotten from the Lottos is going to be a bit limited because you can only open a max of 20 boxes for this event, which is a little bit unfortunate. I wish they would just lift that restriction, and hey, maybe they will. Maybe we'll get a random surprise where they say, you know what, you can farm this Lotto as much as you want, which if that is happening, go nuts on this event. But even if it doesn't happen, this will still be a very, very strong event for you to farm because 20 Lotto boxes is just 20 additional boxes of material that you're going to be able to get. You'll still be able to get the mats, the apples, the mana prisms, just a bunch of really good stuff that you want to make sure you don't miss out on. And it's technically in addition to you clearing out the event shop anyway. You know, you're going to be doing normal farming. Might as well clear out that Lotto box while you're at it. Now, this 90++ node is actually kind of interesting because while it does feature an enemy with 1 million HP that is a Sky attribute enemy, which is normally very annoying. Look at the last Lotto where we just had Charlemagne who only had like 750,000 HP and was Sky attribute, and everybody was super upset, myself included, because it was just rather annoying to try to get around. But the interesting thing about this is that the enemies are all berserkers, so technically, if you are, say, doing buster farming or something, you don't have to play to the strengths, or I guess the weaknesses of the enemies on this node if you, say, went out and maxed out a really strong servant. You know, if you have yourself a really strong NP5 servant, you put a lot of work into them, and they've got decent enough skills for you to be able to loop back, even if you are required to maybe get like a crit here and there, you should be able to get through this fairly consistently, right? That is kind of the nice thing about them being berserkers. But not everybody's going to be in that position. Some people are going to need to take advantage of how the node is composited. So let's just talk about standardly if you're going to go into this and you want to play into the weaknesses of the bosses. So it is going to be a 1-3-2 node, which does also mean that art setups are in a pretty good position for this one as well, but we'll talk about them in just a second. And it does feature a large 300,000 HP Oni at the very beginning that has an Earth Power Mod weakness. They also technically have weaknesses to demonic or the demon tag, stuff along those lines if you want to try to take advantage of those. But if you're doing a buster setup, you're going to want to focus on that Raikou at the very end. And Raikou does actually have some really good traits that you could take advantage of. Sky being one of the ones that is harder to try to take advantage of because there's not a whole lot of people that actually have Sky Power Mod, except if you do have Okita Altar or if you do also have Mao Nobu. Both of them can be very good at getting into this event and being able to take advantage of that to do mad damage on them. Mao Nobu is also really good because she has that charisma skill, or I guess not a charisma, but that attack buff that she gives herself that ramps up every single turn, where she starts off at kind of like a smaller attack buff, which might make things a little difficult at the very beginning, but by the time you get to wave 3, it will be a 70% attack buff, and keep in mind with her most recent buffs, not only can she guarantee herself burning battlefield on the first skill, but she gets the Sky Power Mod on the second, and then she gets an additional buster buff on the third, as well as a 30% battery, meaning that while she's not completely Koyanskaya compliant, you can use her with, say, Oberon if you do have him, which is probably not a coincidence that he's going to be coming back over here on the NA side of things. There's also the fact that makes her doubly good for this one is the fact that she also is rocking the Divinity Power Mod on her NP, and Raikou does share Sky Power Mod and Divinity, or she shares the weaknesses to both of those. So if you do have Mao Nobu, she is actually very well positioned to go into this node and actually kind of tear it apart. Although I would temper my expectations a little bit if you are rocking an NP1 Mao Nobu. I think she'll probably get close to being able to take out the Raikou, but again, NP1 is still NP1, so you might have a little bit of struggles beating it, but it's nothing a couple of face cards can't fix. Okita Alter is also a very interesting one. I will probably toy around with her a little bit as mine is NP2. I don't think she's going to be exactly one-tapping the Raikou on this one, but as someone who really does like Okita Alter, I will probably use this as an excuse to just maybe even just try to get a 4-turn clear kind of secured, because she only has a 30% Sky Attribute power mod, but you can loop that because of how Koyanskaya allows you to refund all of your skills. So technically, you should view that as a 60% Sky power mod, just as for Maonobu, hers is going to be more of 100%, because again, you can loop those skills back. Although again, do not try to go in there and be like, my Okita Alter is going to one-shot this lady. I'm like, she'll do pretty good, but I do think it's still going to require, you know, your Oberon, obviously, because of the 30% battery, and you're also going to probably want at least like NP2 or some higher investment into her. But she is, again, uniquely positioned to do well because her third skill does give her 30% NP damage for 3 turns. You loop that back, 60% NP damage, plus the 20% that you get from Oberon. That is functionally a Max on the Broken Black Grail without having to have it as an equip CE, because she can't do the looping otherwise with Black Grail, unless I guess you're going to have somebody else knock out wave 1, but then that means you're kind of, I don't know, in some like weird position where you can't use like a Koyanskaya or an Oberon, and kind of ruins other things that you got going on over here. If you are rocking an NP1 Okita Alter, do also take some solace in the fact that while her Buster Resistance down doesn't apply first, it will hit the Raikou for 3 turns, so if you are relying on a face card to take her down, you will get bonus damage on follow-up Buster cards, on top of all like the Buster crit damage you're getting from the Koyanskaya, so she should still have a fairly easy time getting through it over some other servants. But like always, Sky Attribute is kind of a hard thing to take advantage of, so if you don't have either of those two, there are other characters you can try to use. Now, I don't think these are the craziest servants, specifically getting into Chaotic, but you could try to take advantage of Lancer Artoria if you have her, but the problem is her power mods are only 1 turn, so you can't double stack them. So while I think some people might try to use her, it's going to be a little bit awkward. You're probably going to have to do something like fire all your buffs on turn 1, and then try to just kind of raw go into turn 2. Because you'll need to save those buffs again for turn 3, which again is probably still not going to be the most impressive unless you just have an absolutely yoked out, you know, Lancer Artoria who's going to be able to maybe take out the Raikou with some follow-up, you know, face cards. But someone that I think is very well positioned and is very well rewarded for this one is Archetype Earth. If you did go really hard on her, this Chaotic power mod is going to go ballistic in this one, because not only does she not have to fight enemies neutrally, because they're berserkers, she gets to be super effective, but she actually has the full Chaotic power mod, so she should be able to kind of just dumpster this one, because sure, NP1 might struggle a little bit if you're not going to be using Black Grail or the likes, but most people that went for Archetype Earth didn't just simply go for an NP1, they were going for like NP3 to NP5, so if you're one of those people, you're going to have a very good time going into this one. Good is really lacking in the Buster department. This is going to be more of something that you try to take advantage of, maybe with like some art servants, but even they're not in the best position to really take advantage of this, so I just wouldn't bother if that's the one thing you're going to try to take advantage of. Female is normally really good if there's only one person, but then again, you really only have Jack and Carmilla to take advantage of that. But hey, if you're doing like a 9-turn setup with Ruler Scotty or something, maybe Jack will cook for you, but that's really only for people that are really down bad and have like these beginner boxes, but for some reason you have Jack and you have like Ruler Scotty or something. I mean, I guess you could try to get yourself in a position where the Scotties maybe try to take out the Oni and then the second wave, and then your Jack just has to fight everybody on the final node. I mean, it's not the best thing ever, but if you're really down, that down bad, I guess you could try to do that. I think Divinity is definitely a better route to go, because you do have a pretty nice plethora of options over here. Unfortunately, Karna does not have the buff that fixes his battery. If he did, bro would be really sick nasty for this, but this is going to be coming next year when we get like the Salter buff and everything. That's kind of just the farming update realistically for a lot of these characters. But there are 2 options, one for arts and one for quick, that we are going to circle back to when we're done talking about Buster. But the final Buster AoE servant that I think is kind of notable if you're trying to take advantage of these different power traits that she has is actually Gilgamesh. If you have a decently strong Gilgamesh, she is weak to Enema Elish, so you could just use him as long as you, again, have like an Oberon or something, because he does only have a 30% battery. You're going to need him if you want Gilgamesh to farm all 3 nodes. You could try to use him to try to take down the Raikou, but you are either going to be A, relying on face cards, or B, going to need a really strong Gilgamesh, because even though these guys are berserkers, the first wave is still a 300k Oni who is is not weak to Enema Elish. The second wave I don't think will really be a problem for him because they're like 120k. My Gilgamesh at NP1 is able to clear that one, but the 300k guy I'm not so certain about. But if you are able to get it into a range where kind of any face cards do it, thankfully your Koyan Skias can be those face cards with their buster cards, because the benefit of going into a Berserker node is that everybody's going to be super effective on them. So do keep that in mind. I do think it is kind of notable. I'll probably tinker around with a Gilgamesh setup and probably upload that as kind of like just a couple of different runs on the channel when the 90++ does drop over here, but thought I would just kind of shout out my boy over here because, hey, he's technically got a good matchup into this one. On paper, it's a good matchup. But the Divinity one is something that I actually wanted to hark on, because if you do have Tai Gong, you're kind of rewarded for this one. While he's not the craziest looping servant, with somebody like Ruler Scotty now being in the game, giving him extra NP gain, and if you've got Oberon to kind of lean on, you can get that extra battery going. Or even try to get yourself in a position where, because Tai Gong gives everybody battery, you could maybe even unlock the append skill on your Ruler Scotty if maybe you did get her decently strong and you have all the buffs going around, to try to get her to take out the second wave. So realistically, your Tai Gong only has to fight the first wave and the third wave, or whatever combination you want to use, because he does have a very large power mod against divine enemies, and again, does support the other members of the party, giving them not only a quick buff, an attack buff, but also an NP damage buff, which does synergize rather well with Oberon. Another person who's very similar to this is Vitra for arts teams, because she gives the entire team a divinity power mod. Now, it's not the largest power mod, but if you say have a really strong art servant, let's just for the sake of argument say somebody like Muramasa, right? You have like an NP5 Muramasa, but he's just whiffing on the damage needed to take out the Raikou. Well, giving him that little power mod because of how FGO calculates damage could be the thing that you need, with her also giving everybody an NP damage buff for one time. If you time it properly, Vitra might be a servant that you could use to say clear out waves 2, so that way your Muramasa only has to down the Oni at the beginning and then Raikou at the end. She can use her wave to just take out the guys in the middle, and then now your Muramasa has the extra NP damage, he's got the divinity power mod, and that could push him over the edge. Do take advantage of her if you did manage to pull her, as she is on every single banner, I believe. So if you did manage to get spooked by her, now is the time to break her out so you could finish off this node. Now, I did say good is technically not super good to take advantage of, but I guess if you have a really strong Ruler Moriarty, he does have a power mod against good aligned enemies, so you could try to break him out for this one, but Ruler Moriarty already doesn't do a whole lot of damage. But again, maybe you're like the one guy like me that is a huge fan of Moriarty and you just went ham taro on the banner to try to get a couple of copies of him. You could try to break him out for this one, but I don't advise it, because even with the power mod's just going to more cover up for his lackluster normal damage. I don't think it's going to put you in a position where you're really going to just be consistently farming this node. This is also assuming you're just going to be using a max CE setup or trying to get as close to max as possible. If you're willing to concede a CE slot for, say, your arts or quick farmers, well, more so your arts farmers for Black Grail, because quick is going to struggle a little bit because they're berserkers. You have the benefit of being able to use whoever you want, but quick's not going to be able to loop as well, so kind of that Ruler Scotty buff is mitigated a little bit, not for all of them but for most of them. But arts doesn't struggle as much because their natural NP gain is a bit higher. If you're willing to concede that and use Black Grail, a lot of your other servants are going to have a much easier time getting through this. I mean, most servants with Black Grail plus an Oberon are probably just going to be able to fight this naturally and blow them up. I should say at least most good servants. I don't want somebody trying to go in here with like, my NP2 Zenobia was not able to clear this, and it's like, okay buddy, let's calm down on that one. Most good farming servants should be able to beat their way through this, and that might not even be the wrong way to go about this, because it's a limited lotto. So if you just want to try to get all the boxes done and you're willing to concede a couple of extra apples here and there to have an easier time farming, or maybe to just, you know, use FGA and take a load off with that one and get a consistent run going so you technically don't have to farm it, that is also a valid option. It's probably something that I'm going to do as well, because while I am a little bit hurting for apples over on NA, we did get kind of a bunch of them from the lotto. Like, I'm sitting on a fat stack of bronze apples, so I might just put them to use and just have an easier time farming. Now, I haven't really harped on the second wave very much. It is some sky attribute enemies with the punch repelling experts being in there. You also have this goofy ass snake guy in there as well that shares the earth power mod that the Oni on wave 1 has. I really don't think the second wave is going to be all that difficult for most people, because 124,000 HP is something that most servants that are AoEs are going to be able to climb over with just their natural buffs, plus like things that they catch from, you know, Castoria's charisma, stuff that you don't have to specifically target on them. They should be able to get through this one pretty easily. I wouldn't concern myself with it too much. If you're thinking of multi-core setups and you're willing to maybe concede going for a 4-turn clear, someone like Tyra could be fairly decent in this. If you want to have her punch up the guy at the very beginning, as it is a single target node, have your AoE drop the second one, and then have Tyra just kind of go to town on the Genji Raikou and just obliterate her, and then maybe take out the side enemy that only has 100,000 HP with some follow-up crits or something. Or if your servant is good enough, say you're using someone like, I don't know, like a Space Ishtar or something, you know, just an AoE servant that should be able to refund at least like 50% of their NP back. What you could do is use Tyra or an adjacent single target that you think can drop Raikou to take out the first enemy, have your looper with the battery, you know, get around like 50% of their refund back by giving them Castoria skills, and then go into that final wave. Maybe your single target, maybe your Tyra only hits, you know, the Raikou for 900,000, 800,000, something along those lines. Well, you can also fire the AoE NP on top of that, so that way they'll also, you know, make the other guy catch a stray, drop the other guy, and then that NP will push it over to the point where you might be able to get a consistent 3-turn going. Now, unfortunately, if you're not rocking Koyenskaya, you're not rocking Oberon, you don't have Black Grail, you don't have Castoria, doing the 90++ is probably not going to be for you. There probably are some setups out there that you could try to take advantage of. I imagine people like Nero Bride might be fairly decent. You could try to get away with like a friend Castoria, a Nero Bride, because she still gives you the NP gain, still gives you the battery, gives you Sky Power Mod, which is good against Raikou, and then also gives you a fairly decent attack buff. But I think that's going to be a little bit more janky, but still maybe possible. But if it's something that's really stressing you out, something I always want to emphasize for these events is that you can just go down to the 90+ node. You know, if you are stressing out playing the Lotto, trying to figure out something that's consistent for you, just dial it back a little bit. Just move down to the other node, or even a node below that. I mean, there are 2 nodes below this one. One opens with round 6. It's strictly just for Lotto material. And then the 90+ is kind of annoying. It's a 2-1-2 node, but the enemies are significantly smaller. And it's something that someone like, say, Summer Ibuki can kind of just brute force her way through, especially if you want to play it real risky and just do card RNG for the middle node. But I don't know if anybody's really down for doing that. But again, you got options. You got to consider stuff outside of just the norm, the more limited your box is. But there's no shame in like going down to the 90+, or even just the normal Lotto farming node and then just farming stuff there, you know, because at the end of the day, you're supposed to have fun playing the game, and it shouldn't be something that's stressing you out. You know, if you're playing a game and it's stressing you out, you might need to step away from a little bit. You shouldn't be having heart palpitations trying to figure out how to farm a node. And I just want to make that clear every time we have one of these events, you know, because on JP, I try my best to try to get my way through all the 90++ nodes, and I try to do it with like pretty much my arts only account. But there are just some nodes that I'm like, it's not worth it. When we had the Tomias event come out, I was able to maybe get a consistent 3 to 4 turn with Durga, depending on my card RNG, but I was like, man, this is stressing me out every single time I go into this. I gotta focus on it too much. I'm just gonna drop down to the 90+ and have a much easier time. I'm just gonna enjoy myself over there. So there's no shame in doing that. And if you think that you could do the 90++ and you're wondering, well, I think I have the box to chew through this, feel free to go down to the description down below. We have a Discord, and my Twitch is down there as well. The Discord people are up at all hours of the night because we have people from all over the planet in there. And so if you want to go in there and be like, hey man, I got X, Y, and Z servant, we got people in there that will definitely help you out if I'm not available. And if you want my input specifically, well, I stream, and I've been known to be more than willing to just go through calculations, and people are like, I have X, Y, and Z servant. I'm like, all right, let's pull up the calculator and see how much damage you'll do. Because a lot of times you'll find out that your servant either does a lot more damage than you think, or they don't do as much damage as you think. Because we've definitely had some people come on and I was like, dude, even with the double Koyenskaya and the Oberon, you're doing half of their HP. Like, you're not doing nearly as much damage as you thought you were doing. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to give you as many tools as possible to try to tackle this event. Because again, it's just going to be a nice little event, the calm before the storm, before we get into Lost Belt 7, where we're all going to be pulling our hair out, fighting all these bosses, and probably crying reading the story. But with all that being said, if you enjoyed the video, found it entertaining, found it informative, helpful, I would appreciate a like on the video and maybe even a subscription to the channel, as it is free and helps me out more than you know. And if for some ungodly reason you feel like going that extra mile, my Patreon is also linked down in the description down below as well. For these next couple of months, I'm kind of working on, like reading a bunch of the FGO story and stuff again, so I can kind of compile these lore videos that I'd like to put out with some regularity, maybe putting them out on like Saturdays or Sundays or something. And the patrons are going to get all the rough drafts for that first. They're going to get the videos first when they finally do come out. So if you want to be a part of that, hey, that's down in the description down below if you're interested. But with all that being said, long-winded video aside, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, stop yapping, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.